Hello guys, what's up and welcome back. My name is Emmanuel Gijo and thank you for being here tonight. Thank you for taking the time to check out this video. So in today's video, we're going to be talking about how to set up a Linux lab environment in the cloud. So this is going to be a step-by-step guide for beginners, right? So the two important things we're going to talk about is what is a Linux lab environment in the first place? What is it, right? And the second thing we're going to talk about that's important is why is it important to even set up that Linux lab environment. So let's dive into the first one. So the first one is, what is a Linux lab environment? A Linux lab environment is a structured setup, typically using a personal computer or a cloud provider, designed to help users explore and practice Linux concepts, including system commands, configurations, troubleshooting, and administration tasks without impacting real-world systems. So what this definition is trying to explain is that a Linux lab environment is a place where you go to practice Linux. You go to practice how to run Linux commands. You go practice how to do configurations on a Linux server. You practice how to troubleshoot a Linux server, and you also practice how to do some administrative tasks that real world engineers are doing out there. And the beauty of setting up a Linux lab environment to practice these things is that you're not going to impact, you won't have any impact on real world systems. It means you can practice without the fear of destroying anything, right? It's a place where you go to practice, you go to learn, and you go to play. So why is it important? Why is it important for you to set up a Linux lab environment? The first one is hands-on learning, right? So you have to know that when you set up a Linux lab environment, this environment allows you to practice commands. That's the first thing. It also makes it possible for you to understand how a Linux server is being configured or how configurations are made on a Linux server. It experience when it comes to troubleshooting a Linux server, and by doing all of this, makes it easy for you to understand Linux and different Linux concepts. So the first big advantage of setting up your Linux server is that it's going to give you some hands-on experience. The second thing is risk-free experimentation, right? When you set up your servers, your Linux lab environment, you can test new setups, you can test new softwares, you can test different configuration without having to worry that you're going to break any system or you're going to lose any data, right? So that's why it's important for you to set up, that Linux lab environment. The third reason is real-world preparation, right? A lab helps simulate real-world scenarios. So this environment will help you simulate real-world scenarios. It means engineers that are out there and they're using Linux. What are they doing? What do they do on this Linux servers on a day-to-day basis, right? How do they connect to these Linux servers? How do they install applications? How do they use it to deploy websites or applications, right? So this lab environment will prepare you for things like that. It will give you, a real world experience when it comes to server management, when it comes to troubleshooting, and when it comes to system administration, right? You'll be comfortable so that by the time, you're done with your whole IT course and, you go out there and you're looking for a job, and when you get your job and you start doing that job, you are extremely comfortable with, implementing what you've learned, right? So this is something that this lab will also help you to gain. So what are the different ways you can set up this lab environment? So the two ways. The first one is you can do what I call a local setup, that you can use your laptop or your desktop. So if you have a laptop at home or you have a desktop, you can use that laptop to set up your Linux lab environment. The second way is cloud setup. So basically, you go to a cloud provider, you create create an account, and you use that account to set up your lab environment. So you can go to AWS, Azure, or GCP. You can create an account there, and once you create your account, then you will use that AWS account, Azure account, or GCP account to set up your lab environment. And whenever you want to practice Linux, you just log into your account and you start practicing Linux. Now let's see how to set up a Linux lab environment locally. Now for local setup, everything here is going to be theory based. I'm not going to dive into anything serious. It's just going to be theory related. So to set up a Linux lab environment locally, the first thing is that you're going to need a laptop. So let me see if I can find picture of a laptop. Cool. So you're going to need a laptop like this, or you're going to need a desktop, right? So either you get yourself a laptop, or you get yourself a desktop, right? Now we're going to assume that this right here represents your laptop right here. This represents your laptop, and this laptop can be any laptop in the market. Can be Mac OS, it can be Windows, right? It can be, any laptop with any operating system in the market. But the first thing I want you to know is that this is a physical, laptop, right? Or desktop. And your laptop and your desktop both have, an operating system, what's known as an OS, right? Your laptop and your desktop both have an operating system. And it can be any operating system. It can be Windows or it can be Mac OS. Please, if you don't know what operating systems are, there's a video on my channel. It's titled "What is Linux?" Under that video, I talk about what operating systems are and how operating systems work and the different types of operating systems that exist in the market. So you're going to need a physical laptop like this, or a desktop, either a laptop or a desktop, and it's going to be a physical one. And your laptop, when you go to the market, you buy your laptop, it comes with an operating system already installed in it. If you buy, let's say, an HP computer, it comes with Windows. If you buy a Dell, it comes with Windows. But if you buy a MacBook Pro or a MacBook Air, it comes with a Mac OS operating system. But now here's the thing. Because you want to practice Linux, you cannot practice Linux on Windows, because Linux on its own is an operating system, just like Windows, just like Mac OS. So you cannot practice Linux on a Windows operating system or on a Mac OS operating system. So what you need is a Linux operating system, right? But now here's the thing. This laptop right here already has an operating system, right? Your HP laptop already has an operating system, and that operating system is Windows. And your MacBook already has an operating system, and that operating system is Mac OS. So what do? You will need to install the Linux operating system, right? You will need to install the Linux operating system so you can practice Linux on a Linux operating system. But now here's the thing. You cannot just go and you uninstall your Windows operating system and you install the Linux operating system, right? Or you cannot just go and you uninstall the Mac OS operating system, then you install the Linux operating system. That's going to be difficult to do. And moreover, your laptop is your personal computer, so you're using it to do different things. Maybe you're using it for school, you're using it for work, you're using it to do different things. So deleting your entire operating system means you're deleting everything in your laptop and installing a new operating system that you don't know how to use, right? So the way it would work is that since you cannot delete Windows or Mac OS, you will need to create a virtual machine. Remember, this is a physical machine. Your laptop or your desktop is a physical machine. So you will need to create a virtual machine, right? That will come with its own operating system, and that operating system will be Linux. So how do you create this virtual machine? So in order for you to create this virtual machine, you will need a piece of software that will make it possible for you to create this virtual machine. And that software is what they call a hypervisor, right? So you will need a hypervisor. So what is a hypervisor? A hypervisor is simply a piece of software that makes it possible for you to run multiple virtual machines on top of a physical machine, right? And there are different types of of hypervisors out there. You have, you have VirtualBox, right? You have Hyper-V, right? You have VMware, and different types of hypervisors, right? So when you install a hypervisor on your laptop or desktop, and it can be any of these hypervisors here, when you install this hypervisor on your laptop or desktop, then you will not create another type of machine, right? You will not create another type of machine. Now, in this scenario, this would be a virtual machine, and this machine will have its own operating system, and in this case the operating system would be what? It would be Linux, and this machine would have all the components that this other machine has. For example, a RAM, a CPU, a memory, a disk, every single thing that this machine has, this other virtual machine will have it. Then you will not use this virtual machine you've created to practice Linux locally. So this is what they call, the local set, right? As you can see, local setup involves a couple of, steps. Right. So first of all, you need a physical machine. And once you get that physical machine, you install a hypervisor on that physical machine. This can be VirtualBox, this can be Hyper-V, this can be VMware. Then once you have your VirtualBox installed, you now create a virtual machine with an operating system that's Linux, right? And now you have one physical machine but two operating systems. And the reason they have two is because there's an operating system for that came with the original laptop, and there's now another operating system that was created when you created your virtual machine using a hypervisor. As you can see, there are a lot of steps, right, in setting up a Linux lab environment locally. A lot of steps, right? Now, I don't like this, even though this is how a lot of people do it or prefer to do it. But I don't like this, and for a couple of reasons. The first reason is that there's resource limitation. Right? Because remember, when you go to the market and you buy a laptop or a desktop, that laptop comes with a CPU, it comes with RAM, it comes with storage. And these resources are designed to work with a single operating system. So when you install another operating system, you have to share these resources. For example, let's say, so I'm just going to use any of this diagram as a RAM. Cool. So this is a RAM right here. Now, let's say this RAM had a capacity of 8, and this 8 came with your original laptop. Now when you install a virtual machine, or when you create a virtual machine, you will need to divide this RAM into two. So you will need to divide this into two, and your physical machine may have 4 and your virtual machine may have 4, right? So you notice that at some point your physical machine may become slow, right? Because some of the resources are being used by your virtual machine, and you see your machine becomes slow. Whenever you shut down your machine, it takes time for it to boot, come back online, and now you're unable to do different things. And it's same thing for storage, right? If you had 1 terabytes of storage, you have to divide that into two. You have to assign one to your virtual machine, right, and leave half to your physical machine. I don't like that, and I just feel like for me that's a disadvantage. Now the second disadvantage is risks of data loss or corruptions. Now remember that the reason why you are setting up a lab environment is because you want to practice Linux, and we talked about risk-free experimentation, right? When you do it locally, there is some form of risk because you're practicing Linux and something may happen, right? And that may lead to data loss, or that may lead to corruption during configuration experiments, right? And I don't think you want that, and I don't think you want to put yourself in that situation. Another one also is limited scalability and isolation, right? So there is limited scalability and isolation, right? Personal computers are not designed for scalable or isolated lab, making it difficult to mimic real-world production environments. Right? So in a real-world scenario, companies do not use laptops to deploy applications. They use servers, so they don't use laptops. So when you set up your Linux lab environment on a laptop, it's difficult to mimic. It's difficult to have a feel of how companies are working with Linux servers to deploy their applications, right? So these are just some of the reasons why I'm not a big fan of setting up my Linux lab environment on my lap. So how do you do it? I prefer using the cloud, right? The cloud is, my favorite way of setting up a Linux, lab environment. And when you're using the cloud, it's pretty straightforward. And all you have to do is you choose a cloud provider, in this case, AWS. Then what's next? Create an AWS account. And from there, you set up your lab environment in that AWS account, right? And you set up your lab env. And this process is straightforward. And I like it for a couple of reasons. One is that there's nothing like resource limitation when you're on AWS. There's nothing like risks of data loss, because if you do a misconfiguration, you can always destroy that server and you create a new one. And there's also nothing like limited scalability and isolation. With AWS, you can mimic real-world production environments, because there are millions of companies out there that are using AWS to deploy their applications. So when you set up your lab environment on AWS, you can mimic real-world production environments. So how does setting up your lab on AWS works? So the first thing is that you will need to create an AWS account. So you just go to Google and you type AWS free tier account and click on this. Then you now have this AWS free tier. It means when you create your AWS account for the first time, AWS will give you some resources to use for free. Like for example, under compute, you have 12 months free and you have 750 hours per month for free. It means you can launch a server. It can be Linux, it can be any server of your choice for free. It's called the free tier. I'll show you how to choose a free tier server, how to create a free tier server on AWS. So you create one for free and you get 750 hours per month. 750 hours is a lot, right? Linux is not difficult to study. It doesn't take that long to study it. So you won't need 750 hours of time. So